Hi, I'm here today with Dr. Rachel Wood, Associate Professor here in the School of Law. Would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Hi. So, as you explained, I'm an Associate Professor, but the other role, which is important to why we're here today, is that I'm head of the Business and Law Clinic. So I'm the person in the School of Law who coordinates the pro bono activities and clinics that we run. And another hat that I wear in that context, as do you, Scott, is as a solicitor. And we were both formerly solicitors in practice and now back on the roll so that we can help advise clients.
We're looking within the First Student Lawyer Project at the value of pro bono. And so obviously you're a natural person to talk to about that. I wonder if you could help us with the context and the background for why this is an issue worth talking about.
So pro bono for good is basically lawyers giving free legal advice. And it's something they've always done. And I think lawyers don't always have a good reputation, but a lot of lawyers want to give back and use their skills to give back to their communities. Sadly, pro bono has become increasingly important because of the lack of access to or easy access to free legal advice. Just to give a little bit of background, after the Second World War, when the NHS was set up, what was also set up was a system of legal aid, which meant that people who couldn't afford legal advice could get free legal advice on certain issues that were important. And lawyers were able to do that and get some payment for it. Not generous, but some payment. Over the years, that's reduced. And in 2013, in particular, there was an act through Parliament, the Legal Aid Sentencing and Punishment of Offenders Act, which took down the amount of legal aid that was available and took a lot of things out of scope. So lots of areas where people could get free legal advice before, they no longer could. And that then meant that pro bono advice became more and more important. And it's actually at that point that we start to see a big increase in, for example, the number of university law clinics around the country and what they're doing in terms of helping students to give free legal advice.
When you talk about this free legal advice, what are the types of issues that people need support with?
Social justice issues, so individuals seeking support around circumstances in their lives. So, for example, somebody who loses their job may need advice around employment law. That can lead to debt, so debt advice, housing advice, if they can't pay their rent or their mortgage, or for tenants. You know, there's a lot of need for that around landlords and tenancies. A family law advice, so getting divorced or dealing with children in relationship breakdown, that's something where free advice is no longer available, and immigration. So those are the key, I think, areas in relation to individuals, but organisations benefit from pro bono as well. So small businesses who are starting up, who don't have a lot of capital, need help with legal issues, as do charities and community organisations, for example, taking out a lease or doing a community asset transfer. Some years ago, we did one where we helped a group in Eastville take over a library for the benefit of the community.
There's a lot of talk, there's an expression, access to justice, that's often linked with pro bono, and they're definitely linked concepts. I wonder if you could elaborate a bit about what that phrase means, access to justice, and in particular, what's your take on it?
I think for me, it's about overcoming barriers which prevent people from understanding their legal rights in the first instance. So being able to access an understanding of what the law is, which is difficult. But beyond that, it's being able to use the law, go through, if necessary, processes connected to the law. And here I'm particularly thinking about court processes, which can be very alien, very difficult, very emotionally challenging, particularly, for example, if you think about somebody who's been through a domestic abuse situation, and where it's very difficult to do that without proper legal support and advice, and in some cases representation. The removal of legal aid in 2013 saw a massive rise in litigants in person. That's very challenging for those people, but it's also very challenging for the courts because they're now having to manage people who don't understand what's required, they don't understand their legal position, and they don't understand what the court needs from them to be able to help them. So access to justice is anything that can smooth those issues away and make people more comfortable and confident and able to manage their legal issues.
Clearly very related to pro bono in terms of sort of filling that need. let's bring it a bit closer to home. What's the position in Bristol in particular, in our region, with Pro Bono, and
so
how's that managed?
It's a good and a bad picture. It's bad in the sense that Bristol is an area, and I think a lot of areas in Britain are like this, where the need for pro bono is increasing all the time. Since COVID was a huge issue, and then the cost of living crisis has meant that the levels of debt, the levels of issues around housing and so on are rising and continuing to rise, and poverty is a big issue in Bristol. There's a really interesting report which was put out by the Bristol Advice Partnership, which coordinates a number of organisations in Bristol who provide advice. And you can find it on the Bristol Law Centre website, which goes into detail about this. But that's the negative picture. The more positive picture is that Bristol has always been somewhere where pro bono has been an important focus of the community. The law centre here has been going strong for a long time. It's a core law centre in England. But there is a wider network which was established by somebody from the Law Centre in 2019 called the West of England Pro Bono Group, which brings together the advice agencies but also the university law clinics and the commercial firms and the barristers' chambers that are involved in providing pro bono services in Bristol, so that we all have a really good understanding of what's available and hopefully can increase what we offer and align together so that access to services is easier for people in Bristol. And I'm very lucky because at the moment I'm one of the co-chairs of that with a lawyer, Laura, who is from Simmons & Simmons, the firm Simmons & Simmons.
So, as you say, it's a good and a bad picture as things stand now. Can I just ask you to gaze into your crystal ball for a moment, and in both Bristol and the wider society in our country, what do you see as the future? Where is pro bono going? How is access to justice going to be impacted in the coming years?
So what I'd like to say is that we'll see a return to higher levels of legal aid, because the reality is that whatever we do, pro bono isn't a substitute for a properly funded legal system. But that doesn't look as if it's happening anytime soon. So we have to move with the times, and where things are moving in the legal sector generally is in the increase in use of technology, which supports provision of services. So the commercial firms are well ahead with this in the way that they're embedding technology in their work. What I'd like to see is that trickle down and be made available to the pro bono sector, because at the moment, obviously, a lot of advice agencies are not well funded and could benefit hugely from better technology. And good technical systems would hopefully enable more people to access free legal advice, even where the capacity of lawyers doesn't increase, which it doesn't look like it's going to, unfortunately.
You put emphasis on a particular word there, good advice, and I suppose is that the difference between someone going to, for example, ChatGPT and relying on it for legal advice versus actually getting proper support and proper help from someone who might then use AI or similar tools, but in a knowing manner? Is that sort of that distinction?
Yeah, so I think that there is an awful lot of advice out there about the law, but it's difficult to navigate. And I know, for example, of some work we've done with some survivors of domestic abuse that, they were almost overwhelmed with the amount of information on the internet, but they weren't in a position to actually untangle it and worked out how it applied to them. So ChatGPT is dangerous because actually it doesn't give correct advice. And so it has to be used, but if you're going to use it at all, you have to use it in a very knowing way, as you know. I think what I'd like to see is more services where some level of bespoke advice could be provided using technology, but a good deal of investment is needed in that, and it doesn't remove the need for lawyers at all, because the human side of that is still very, very important. The representation in court is very, very important. But if we could do more with what we've got, that would be the aim. That would be a positive outcome for the future.
Absolutely. Let me ask one final question then. Thinking about our students and their role with pro bono, now in the short term and in the longer term. What's the value to them of being involved in pro bono work?
I don't think I can overestimate the value to students of being involved in this way. So obviously, for me, the first value is the value they give back into the community in terms of actually using their skills to actually help people who need it. So they've got something special and they can use it in a special way to actually do good. And that's really, really important. But the win is on both sides, because the skills that can be developed through doing pro bono work are exactly the skills which employers are going to be looking for in the future. And for example, we were at a event held at Burgess Salmon at the end of September about pro bono, and the managing partner there was talking about the fact that his lawyers who do pro bono, for some of them, particularly the junior lawyers, actually the pro bono work gives them direct exposure to clients and the experience of working directly with clients, which they might not get until they're rather more senior in their commercial roles, where they're perhaps working on big deals, big transactions, where actually they won't have immediate contact with clients. The work they'll be doing will be more backroom. So it builds their confidence there, working in teams, learning about managing deadlines, learning the human skills, the empathy that's required in building relationships. These things are all highly relevant when you're working in commercial settings as well, and are valued by the firms. Also, increasingly, the firms are thinking about their pro bono offering. And so, I think a good interview question is what opportunities are there to do pro bono work? If you're going in for an interview with one of the commercial firms. Barristers as well. So there's an organisation called Advocate, and they take on free cases and send them out to barristers. For barristers, they are able to develop skills which perhaps they're not, if they're junior, they're not yet getting through their paid work, but they can build their experience again, as well as doing something which is really, really important and valuable for their clients.
Quite a lot to think about. There are lots of issues we've talked about. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.